I'm the coordinator of the Lactam study group, and I have to say that if we have one mother or godmother, that's Venerable Robina Cortin. It's a group. For those who don't know Venerable Robina, I think she's one of the most unusual Buddhist nuns you ever meet.
I've never had that description before.
Just about the opposite of what you think when you think Buddhist monk or Buddhist nun. Sitting in the cave and isolated, not speaking to anybody. Venerable speaks a lot and very fast. And if I didn't educate you, she probably is the one who will. So I'm so happy to have you here, Venerable.
Happy to be back.
When we first, just a warning, when we first met Venerable Robina, I think we knew her only for about 3 minutes or so. She asked,
3 minutes.
She asked, where are you from? We said, from Zurich. She said, is there a study group or a center in Zurich? No. Well, you should start one. And we said, we are so not ready for this, Venerable. A few years later, so we didn't run and start the group straight away, but a few years later, and about 6 years ago, the group started, and we've now had this location for more than 3 years. But a few years of that, obviously, we've been all sitting at home, and Venerable has been teaching here also, but she never somehow left the group. So Venerable, we just were driving, and Venerable said it's been 3 years since I have been here.
3 years since I was here, exactly.
And I said, no, Venerable, you are here every week. We're so happy to have you here. Venerable is now the first teacher since the pandemic started to be in the center, so also very auspicious.
Good.
Also incredible to have everybody here, everybody online as well, but seeing all the friends here in the center again, it's just makes my heart sing, because this center, these flowers have been the owners of this center for the last 3 years, and probably enjoy.
Where are the flowers? There they are. Look. Okay, there you go.
So we're happy about the topic. Karma, I think, so relevant to us. I think we experienced its works and the need for purification for the last few years. So welcome everybody, welcome Venerable, and I'm so happy to pass the word to you now.
I think I left my water behind.
Yes, okay. I will. In the car. Should I bring it? I'll bring it. No problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, people. You do prayers? You've got a prayer book? No, so we don't need. So we just do our little motivation. We think we're here together to listen to these teachings, think about their meaning, and hear it as advice. This is the key point. Hear it as advice. I always say you don't have to take the advice because we're the boss, not Buddha, but it is advice. So hear it like that. So advice for what? Well, it's tools, to help us develop our amazing potential, our mental potential, so we can become happy, so we can help others. Essentially, that's it, really. That's the bottom line for the Buddhist teachings, So we think like that when we're here together. Is this here for a reason? Because someone's going to do this? What's the plan?
I think you were going to do a mandala, but we needed just to go.
Or when Nina does it?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll wait till Nina comes in.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so but first what we're going to do is Nina's going to offer, we'll do the mandala offering. Thank you, darling. And Nina's going to, I know, we'll have to explain this to people. It's so peculiar, this strange looking thing, isn't it? So go on, do your thing.
Should we start, Venerable? Or
Sure. No, we'll do the mandala first.
Okay. Great.
So listen, only the person who does the offering has to prostrate.
Okay.
The people who hold, so all of you going to do the offering or just you?
They will pass the
Okay, they don't need to do it. You're the one who's making the offering, so they don't need to prostrate. Only you.
Okay.
The others they don't have to prostrate.
Thank you, Venerable.
That's right, because they're just the attendants. You see, they're the attendants. So what Nina's going to do is offer, we're going to sing the mandala prayer, which we always do, but she's going to offer a physical, like she always does anyway, when we do the DB class. There's a thing here that looks like 10-pin bowling. For Americans, it looks like 10-pin bowling, but it's meant to represent the universe. Well, it does if you have this view of the universe. And I'm also going to offer representations of enlightened body, speech, and mind. And it's a request for the teachings. Okay. Who's going to sing it? Who's the Umze? Oh, Lars is okay. Very good. That's right. You are indeed.
Yes. Ready?
Yes.
Sashi Perki
Shukshing Metog Tramri Rablinji Nije Gen Padi Sange Jindu Mikte Olwagi Drokonam Dad Jingla Chepasho. Okay. Jetson Yang Darkere Yunahirawa Yense Jinchik Gita Sampe Now we imagine Buddha very happily receiving our offering. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Atayami. All right, so now we can do our little prayer motivation, with our motivation and reminding ourselves of refuge, listening to these teachings with this motivation to develop our own amazing potential so we can help others. That's it. Sangye chadam soke chognam la jancho badu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chonyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye dropa shok sangye chadam soke chognam la jancho badu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chonyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye dropa shok Sangye chadan soke chongnam la jancho badu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chonyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye dropa shog. Okay, people, let me just say something here. Okay. I'm just going to change the view for me, Jeff, because I don't want to look at myself. I want to see the people. There we go. How can I get me out of the way, Jeff? Oh, you want the... So you have me as the main one, but what if, can I just...
Yeah, just
view?
view gallery.
Oh, gallery, here we go. People can do what they like, but I don't want to look at me. That's okay. I'll look at the rest of you. There we go. Okay, people, I have to keep remembering you're here. It's very strange. I can't get over this. So I keep looking at the screen, you know. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, people. So we're going to talk about karma, yeah? Well, I suppose the first thing to talk about, this is Lama Rinpoche, using him as our precedent. And when he first started teaching, like all the hippie Westerners who came to Kathmandu in the 1970s looking for 1, drugs, and 2, enlightenment. Don't ask me why we ever thought they came together, but they did. Very peculiar. So he, you know, the first thing he taught, the first thing before he taught the Buddhist teachings, the first thing he taught, which is logical, is about the mind, that how the mind is not physical and the mind is beginningless and endless. I mean, this is, for us, is beyond hilarious. Because if we can't even think, we can't first posit the view of what the mind is, then the idea of karma is ridiculous, you know, just nonsense. But what karma is this natural law. The Buddha, and this is the point I always stress to remember, that Buddha is not a creator. He doesn't posit a creator. There is no such thing as a creator. And therefore in Buddhism, there's no such concept of punishment and reward. But if you read like Tibetans, I mean, they sound like 10th century fundamentalists, the way they talk, you know, it sounds so heavy. It sounds like punishment and reward. But if there's no creator, how can there be punishment and reward? Who punishes? Who rewards? Nobody. No such thing. And this takes a while, you know, this takes us a while to hear. Because when we hear the Buddha say, don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, and we hear Buddha talk about if you do naughty things, you go to the lower realms. And we hear, you know, these things, it just sounds exactly the same as, for example, the Christian teachings, the Muslim teachings. You're a naughty person, you get punished. You know, you're a good person, you get rewarded. But there is no concept like that. And that's a really important point to try and understand, you know. So what's the implication of this? Well, from the Buddhist, Dalai Lama one time, His Holiness Dalai Lama, he said, the law of karma is like self-creation. It's a marvelous way to put it, but it takes us time to process this, you know. Because if we're not Christians or Muslims, we might be, philosophical materialists. And if we're philosophical materialists, we know the view actually is the same. The view is the same insofar as if you're a Christian, someone out there called God made you. And if you're a materialist, someone out there called mummy and daddy made you. It's the same principle. It's the same idea that you come from someone else. Well, this for the Buddha is the weirdest idea. It's just too peculiar, But that's a very strong view for us. And it's true, we did get a brain from our parents. We did get a body from our parents. But the Buddha would say very clearly, we did not get a mind from our parents. So for the Buddha, this natural law of karma, and, he didn't make it up. He's not a creator. He didn't invent it. He's not speculating. It's come from his own direct observation, I always quote this story. Years ago in New Zealand, actually, and the fellow happened to be a scientist, and he asked this particular question. And I must say, I've never had the question before or since. He was the only person who's ever asked this question that I can remember. He said, who revealed the teachings to the Buddha? Which is natural. We think that way about religion, don't we? It's revelation from on high, made by a creator who invented the universe, invented us, invented the rules, invented the laws, and it's revelation by definition. And so I said, well, would you ask Einstein who revealed the teachings about relativity to him? And of course, everybody laughed. Of course we wouldn't, because we know very well the point of what we call scientific investigation is that somebody uses their intelligence, observes the universe, comes up with what they think are natural laws, and then articulates them. Well, that's exactly Buddha. That's exactly Buddha. And this is a shock to us, because we have a deep assumption that you can't prove something like a past life. We assume that. We can't prove reincarnation. We assume that, So that's why we have to go right back to what is the mind and what is the capability of the mind. So the Buddha's view of the mind is radically different, in so many respects, radically different from the view of the philosophical materialist view. He's not discussing the brain. I mean, I was not trying to say, as I say, I don't try to insult neuroscientists, but you could say the brain for the Buddhist view is the physical indicator of what's going on in the mind, at least at the grosser level. But the key thing about the Buddhist view of the mind, and this comes from these Indians well before the Buddha, these genius yogis and scholars more than 3,000 years ago, they're the ones who investigated and identified and investigated and identified subtler levels of mind that are not posited as existing in the materialist philosophical views, So we have to take this on board. So these subtle levels of mind have the capacity eventually to cognize phenomena that the grosser level can't, such as a past life, a future life, the minds of others. So when we understand the mind in this broader way, then we understand theoretically that the law of karma fits with this view, So the essential point about the law of karma, the law of cause and effect, and it's the natural law that runs the universe, as far as Buddha is concerned, that every sentient being, and there are trillions of sentient beings, mind possessors, Sem Chen in Tibetan, mind possessor, trillions of mind possessors, not just humans, we're a tiny percentage, all the animals, so many other beings we can't see, different realms of existence, all mind possessors. And every one of us is experiencing moment by moment, whether they're called happy experiences or suffering experiences, each one of us just naturally is experiencing this happiness and this suffering, which are the fruits of that person's own past mental, verbal, and physical actions. So the law of karma is such that every sentient being, whatever we think and do and say, sows seeds in our mind. The Buddha uses the analogy of seeds and fruits. It's a good one. Or we might say in the modern terms, every sentient being, whatever we think and do and say, programs us, programs our mind. In other words, everything we think and do and say produces the person we become. And everything we are now is the product of what we have done before. Now, this is not actually a very surprising concept. really, it's not surprising to us, but we don't think of it in spiritual terms like this. We don't think of it in ethical terms. We know very well, if you're a good musician, you can play the piano well, you know perfectly well you produce that musician. We don't say it like that, but it's totally logical. We know that everything you thought and did and said in relation to music is the process that you went through of producing the musician you become. You created the musician that you are. We're not surprised by that, but we don't say it like that. If you're a mathematician, any body of knowledge that you've learned, you produce that person. We know that, but we don't think of it like that. Well, but what's fascinating, we understand this, and this is cause and effect. You produce the cook you become, you produce the musician, you name it. But as soon as it comes to happiness and suffering, think about this. As soon as you think about being a happy person or a suffering person, as opposed to a musician person or a carpenter person, you produce that one, but happy person and suffering person, hey, that's not my fault. I didn't ask to get born. It's not me. It's all them and him and her. I mean, it's such a different concept we have. It's utterly fascinating to me. We think of it this way. We take incredible responsibility when it comes to producing a musician. You know, you've got to internalize musical theory. You've got to learn it and learn it and learn it perfectly. And then you become a musician. We know that. You produce the musician. But we never think that we produce the happy person or the suffering person. We never think this. I mean, it's quite schizophrenic, frankly. It's quite bizarre, frankly, that we don't understand this. We're convinced it's like mummy's fault and daddy's fault. And, you know, if you're an Italian, I heard, God's fault. They have terrible ways of abusing God. I don't know about Swiss people. But I think an Argentinian said more, even worse than the Italians. They have very rude words about God. But you normally don't blame God. I was a Catholic, I never blamed God. But we love to blame mummy and daddy. We blame the outside world. So that really, for the Buddha, is ridiculous. It's like blaming, it's like saying, why are you good at the piano, Robina? Well, it's Bach's fault for writing all the music. It's Steinway's fault for making a good piano. It's my music teacher's fault. That's a joke, you know, we know that's not true. You're the responsible one. You're the one who created the musician. That's what karma means. Your own past thoughts and actions of body and speech are the main cause of the happiness or the suffering you experience. But this is so shocking for us. We can't even begin to hear it. It's very fascinating that we can't. It's very fascinating. But that's essentially what karma is. But we are the boss. We create ourselves. So, of course, the big point here is that you don't start in your mother's womb, you know. This is a bizarre idea for the Buddha. You start in your mother's womb, but your mind doesn't. Your mind joined the egg and sperm at the time of conception, and you brought your mind with you from before. Your mind doesn't, your love and compassion and kindness and being good at music and being good at football do not come from your mother or father or grandfather or the monkeys, and nor do they come from a creator. The Buddha's point is not complicated. It's just that it's so surprising for us. This mind of ours, so that, you know, it's not physical. Everything you think and do and say programs it. Nothing you think and do and say goes astray. Everything is stored in your mind as tendencies, as imprints, as memories, as habits. And then, you know, you die. And then based upon the way you die, there are very detailed teachings about that. You know, particular karmic seeds that you've planted, karmic seeds they refer to, the imprints that you've left in your mind from your past habits. And that's the time of death, particularly strong one will be triggered that will program you to take a future rebirth. And then you bring with you certain tendencies and you bring with you the karmic seeds for certain experiences, and you live out that life, whether it's a lion's life, a dog's life, a human life. We are the main cause of these. That's a very shocking concept to us. So, of course, initially, it's hard to see the logic of it. That's why we have to learn what the mind is, learn about the Buddhist view of what the mind is, learn the logic of this process of karma, take it as our working hypothesis. And then the real point of being a Buddhist is to then apply it in daily life. And this is the tough part. So, you know, there are 4 ways in which our past actions ripen in the present. 4 main ways. The first is the type of body we get, lion, human, whatever. Our past karma, our past actions are the cause of why our mind went to our present mother's human womb, or our mind went to the lion mother's womb. We create the cause for that. The first way our karma ripens then is the type of body we get. The second way our karma ripens is the tendencies within the mind of that person. We can see the humans, we've all got a human body, but look at the differences in the types of humans. Some humans are completely psychotic and crazy and insane and mass murderers and rapists and you name it, some totally suffering, negative, deluded minds. On the other end of the spectrum, we can see some people are really good and kind and loving and compassionate. We can see most of us are in the middle. We have a little bit of everything, We have some negative tendencies and some positive tendencies. So all these tendencies, of course, the whole logic of psychotherapy, the whole logic of neuroscience is that we get those from our mummy and daddy. This is absolute, isn't it, in the materialist view? Totally, Buddha would not agree with that. Absolutely, not one atom of a tendency can you possibly get from your mother or father. You get your brain, you get the genes, you get the DNA, you get the body. There's no argument. That's why the first point to posit here is that your mind is not physical. This is a tough one initially for us, because we're so used to the materialist thinking. And it's not insulting the materialist thinking. I mean, these amazing conversations that Dalai Lama and many of the Tibetan scholars are having the last 30, 40 years with all the great thinkers in the West. There's no contradiction. It's a question of understanding these different systems and then finding a way to put them together. The key point that Buddha makes is your mind is not physical. First. Second, it is not the handiwork of mummy or daddy or creator. And it doesn't begin in your mother's womb. This package began, yes, the coming together of this mind and this body, definitely that started at the first second of conception for the Buddha. When the egg and the sperm came together in your mother's fallopian tube, what caused that egg and sperm to stay and develop as a fetus is the coming of your consciousness from before into that egg and sperm. Otherwise, those eggs and sperms, as we know, will go down the toilet. So it's the entry of a consciousness, a mind, these words are synonymous, into that egg and sperm at the time of conception. That's the beginning of this package. The egg comes from mummy, sperm comes from daddy. Yep, but your mind comes from previous moments of itself. So this has a concept, they call it in Buddhist psychology a mental continuum. So think of it, your mind is like a river of mental moments, or an unbroken chain. If you had perfect memory, this millisecond of what you think and do and say comes from the previous millisecond, which comes from the previous millisecond. If you keep going back inexorably, you'd end up at the first second of conception. And so then the second before conception, the egg was in mummy's body, sperm was in daddy's body, and this consciousness, a previous moment of itself, obviously at a subtler level. And a few weeks before that, it was in a previous body, and so on and so forth. So the big question we have, a huge question, we all have it. When did I begin? When did it begin? When did the world begin? When did suffering begin? It's a powerful question we have. Well, for the Buddha, it's a non-question. It's an absurd question. It's a meaningless question. As His Holiness said, when all his discussions with the scientists, Big Bang, no problem. Just not the first Big Bang, that's all. So the Buddha's idea is that, and this is like the Vajrayana model, the more esoteric teachings, very helpful, actually, just explanation, that the universe consists of minds and matter. That's it, essentially that's it, And matter is made of the four elements. This is how we used to think 1,000 years ago in our culture, isn't it? In the scientific world of maybe not 1,000 years ago. When did Galileo live? I don't remember. Anyway, whatever, those people back then. So now we have many other things, but this model is made of the four elements: earth, air, fire, and water. So we have a thought. I mean, look at it now. They've set off this new amazing 52 billion into the sky, isn't it? Now it's just landed, this big telescope, isn't it? James Webb telescope, cost them $30 billion or something. It's landed where they wanted to be in the universe. It's going to go back into the beginning of time, they said, which is pretty amazing. But the Buddha's view is, that the physical universe, if you started tracking back, where does this when did it begin? Well, you can track it back to the first moment it became that cup. You can. When they put the handle on it, was, you know, paint sealed and painted, and you can say that's the beginning of the cup. But the paint came from something before, the stuff came from something before, and that came from something, and that came from something, and that came from something, and you'll keep going back. Well, you'll get back to the first moment of this universe, and then you have to ask, what about then? That has to have come from whatever was there at the first moment of the universe, and using this concept of 4 elements, that is the product of previous 4 elements. And you cannot, by definition, find a first moment. This is something that Lama Zopa would try and teach us at the very beginning, this concept of the mind being beginningless, which is such a shock to us. I mean, whether you're Christian or a materialist, you began in your mother's womb, isn't it? There's no past, you have no past. Not for the Buddha. You've got countless eons of past. This universe is not the first universe. Whatever exists now in terms of its being matter is literally beginningless. This is a shocking idea, but it's utterly logical if you have the logic of cause and effect. Well, mind being not physical, same. You can go back and you just do it as an exercise of the meditation. This second of my mind, where did that come from? The previous second. And where did those thoughts come from? The previous second. And you get back to the first second of conception. And then where did the first second of conception, where did the mind come from then? Previous second. And then a few weeks back into the previous body. And then when did it start? Previous body, previous one. And we keep wanting to find the first one. It's very desperate inside us, this thought. There has to be a first one. There has to be a beginning. This is utterly fascinating. The Christians, the Catholics in particular, I think, have a serious philosophical discussion, validating that there can be a first cause, capital F, capital C. That, of course, is what they call God. Buddha totally disagrees. Not because he's just being argumentative. It's not feasible. It's not logical. Everything that exists has previous moments. So by definition, you cannot find a first moment. Logically, if the law of cause and effect is what prevails in the universe, and that's what we call science, then by definition, you will never find something that exists that didn't have a previous moment. You can't possibly have, as His Holiness says, the first Big Bang. It's not possible. It's impossible. So it's really good to think that. It might just sound intellectual, but we've got to squeeze our brains, as Lama Yeshe said, But it's a shocking, absurd idea. Even as I said, my mind is beginningless. It's laughable, because we don't even remember most of today. Forget about one life. It's a joke. So it's really a concept deep in our mind that Buddha says has no basis in reality, no basis whatsoever. It's very strong, coming from the view of no cause and effect, coming from a view of grasping at things as permanent, coming fundamentally from the misconception of an inherent I. Very strong in our mind, very strong. There must have been a first moment. There must have been a first moment. No such thing. It's hilarious to think this, but it's logical. It fits, it seems to me, with cause and effect, the logic of cause and effect. And the concept of creation in Buddhism, Buddha argues with it very, very deeply. The logic of it, this is not possible. Actually, the view that the term, isn't it? The term superior being. That's what they use in Christianity, and there's one of those, and it's called God. Well, in Buddhism, everybody can become a superior being. By the time you've realized emptiness, you become what they call an Arya being, a superior being. When you fully developed and become a Buddha, so everybody has the potential to become an Arya being, a superior being, not just one. And that everything, and that the constant in the Buddhist view is the mind, the individual mind. An individual mind is experiencing the fruits of what went on in that individual mind. And you go back to beginningless time with that concept. There's no concept of everything coming from a creator. Therefore, no concept of punishment and reward, which is psychologically, philosophically very deep in our being. As soon as it comes to ethics, we hear it like that. We hear it as punishment and reward, which is why we have so much guilt, so much self-loathing, because we have that view philosophically deep in our bones. Don't blame your Catholic mother for that. Don't blame your Jewish mother for that. We brought it with us, you know. It's a product of ego grasping, a product of the root delusion. So there are 4 ways our karma ripens, our past actions ripen. The first is the type of birth we get, the body. Of course, it's complex, but it's all knowable eventually. But it seems a bizarre idea for us to think that your mind can leave a human body when you die and suddenly be reborn in a lion mother's womb. It sounds the wackiest thing for us, but it's not impossible. So the first is the type of body you have. The second way your karma ripens is in terms, again, I said, the tendencies within that body, within the mind of that person. The tendencies, you know, basically they're a bunch of habits. Tendencies are habits, aren't they? Whether you're good at music, good at football, good at killing, they're habits. And where do habits come from? Having done them before. There's no concept. That's why in Buddhism, this is a bizarre idea that you can get a habit from your parents. It's a bizarre idea. We have a total view, don't we, in the philosophical materialist view. And this doesn't contradict, this is the point, doesn't contradict neuroscience. There's a way of putting these together. So the way to say it would be, for example, I always use the example, my mother was a classical musician. And when she saw her little Bobsy, that's me, she saw that I had potential to be good at music. So she taught me. Well, the way we'd say it in the West is that my mother gave me genes, she did, and therefore my mother gave me music. I was good at music because my mother was a musician. That's how we say it, isn't it? No, not the Buddha. My mother was good at music because she was born with a tendency to be good at music. I was good at music because I was born with a tendency to be good at music. And I happened to have the good fortune to be born to a mother who helped nourish my tendency to be good at music. That's the Buddhist way of saying it. So my tendency to be good at music or killing or whatever came from me, not my mother. I might share that tendency with my mother, but I didn't get it from her. That's the way to say it. So the point is, the point of all this theory, what do you do with it? Any theory, you put it into practice, don't you? And this is the part that's tough. This is the part that's unbelievably intensely hard for us. Why? It's not just because we have been taught the materialist view, not just that, that just reinforces the view of ego, which is to feel that I'm this innocent victim. I didn't ask to get born. We say that, we feel that. We don't need to be, you might know nothing about science. You might know nothing about having a brain. Ego feels like an innocent victim. Animals feel the same. You kick a dog, it will look at you with this panic, like, what have I done to deserve this? How dare you do that to me? This is a function of ego. This is a function of the delusions in the mind, that we have attachment and anger and blame. And then one aspect of this is we reinforce this view in our psychology, that therefore we blame our mothers. I mean, poor mothers get the blame. I don't hear people telling their fathers the blame. It's always mothers, isn't it? You go to your therapist. Oh, I'm being a bit sarcastic. We will go back to what mummy and daddy did to us, you know. And they might have done that to us. And that's the third way our karma ripens. The third way our karma ripens, and this is the part that's very hard for us. It's called experiences similar to the cause. Experiences. The second one is the tendency, which is the action or tendency similar to the cause, which is the habit of having done it before. Well, the experience similar to the cause is the experience at the hands of others. So think of a simple example of say a good action, like, you know, say telling the truth. Let's say you're born in this life with a tendency to be truthful. That's because you've got the tendency to not lie that you brought with you. And even as a child, automatically, you have a tendency to be truthful. You have a tendency to not lie. Now, that's the second karma, the tendency in your mind to not lie, not kill, for example. Now, the experience similar to the cause of past not lying is you won't get lied to. You will be believed. Now, this is the part that's so painful for us if we take it as negative experiences. Let's say you have a tendency to not lie, but people don't believe your words. You're shocked. We are so hurt by that. But I'm telling the truth. Why don't they believe me? Well, the Buddha's view is we've all got billions of karmic seeds in our mind. Just a few of them ripen in this life. So yes, one track of karma is the tendency to not lie, but there's another track of karma coming from another bunch of karmic seeds in your mind, such that in this life, you have the karma to be not believed. And the not being believed has nothing to do with your tendency to not lie now. And this is where it's so painful. But I'm telling the truth. Why don't they believe me, you know? Or you say you're a good person who doesn't get angry, but your partner beats you up. There's no logic to us. We can't work that out. I'm a good person. Why are they hurting me? This is why we suffer so terribly in our life. Because we assume, because I don't lie, everybody must believe me, you know. I mean, I was thinking of Mr. Trump. He even said himself, I could walk down Fifth Avenue and, I forget what he said, but I mean, we know some people, I mean, I remember the Washington Post, New York Times would track his lies. They would track his lies, exactly how many lies he told. Every single day they're telling Mr. Trump's lies. Now, there's a group of people who adore Mr. Trump, and I've watched on YouTube. It's hilarious. They don't care what he says. They believe every single word. We don't care what he says. We believe him. So you could argue that for Mr. Trump, you could say he had a tendency to lie. If they could prove his lies, you could see he lied. That's a tendency to lie. But he must have had the very strong karma, or at least with a certain group of people, from having not lied in the past, such that even when he is lying, everybody believes him. This particular group of people who adore him, you know. It's very interesting. So there's the tendency to do something. Then the third karma is called experiences similar to the cause. And they don't have a direct relationship. They're both from past karma. Got millions of karmic bank vaults, you know. So one lot of bank vaults, you might have lots of experiences, say, of people being kind to you and loving to you and believing your words and giving you things and thinking you're wonderful. But you might be a psychopath. You might have really heavy duty tendencies, or equally, you might have really good tendencies, you know, but be seen as a liar, as a killer. I mean, many of my friends in prison have been accused of things that they did not do, totally innocent, but nobody believes them. So being accused of something you didn't do, being punished for something you didn't do now in this life, this is the pain we experience that we just cannot understand. There's no logic to it whatsoever. This is why if we understand karma, it's hard to apply this law, because the instinct of ego is to deny. The instinct of ego is to say, it's not my fault. The instinct of ego is to say, I didn't ask to get born. It's not my fault. Why is this happening to me? When it comes to the bad things anyway. And the fourth way karma ripens, and this sounds pretty abstract to us, is called environmental karma. It's the very way the physical world impacts upon us. So we take, for example, the action called non-killing. So the main cause for us to have a human body is non-killing. So if each of us in this room and in the people on the Zooms, I suppose you're all humans, and monkeys and dogs there, no. We're all human. That means that at the time of our past death, one of our karmic seeds of non-killing was triggered, that programmed us to go to our present mother's human womb when our mind eventually left that body. And then our mummy hopped into bed with our daddy and boom, 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 whatever happened. So we got a human body. That's the fruit of our past non-killing, one karmic seed. Then in this life, let's say you're born, and if you're a human, you've got a human body, but look at most humans. Most humans actually have a tendency to kill, and it's considered completely normal, and it's considered completely reasonable. If you're a Christian, if you're a Muslim, if you're a Hindu, maybe not, Hindu's a bit less, it's okay to kill certain beings, isn't it? And it's considered totally normal to kill ants, to kill fish, in a war to kill humans, you know. certain contexts. So there we are with the human body. But most humans have a tendency to kill. And this is beyond tragic from the human point of view of karma, you know. Absolutely tragic. The third way karma ripens the third way that non-killing ripens is you don't get, as an experience, is you won't get killed or you won't die young. Now, look at the opposite. Look at the killing. Look at the people who die young on this planet. Children die, babies die, 15-year-olds die, healthy people die. They die, people die young, or people get killed. Airplane accidents, you know, murders. Look at it. Look at the number of humans, just humans, forget the animals. Even fetuses, think of this. If we begin it at the time of conception, I don't think we do this kind of research at all, but if we did, I think we'd be very surprised. That I think we might find that the number of human beings, people who get born as a human, die in the womb even before they're born. And that's called miscarriages and abortions, isn't it? I wouldn't be surprised that more even than those who are born, you know. I wouldn't be surprised. That is because of, I always talk about, I had an abortion when I was 23, you know. That sentient being came to my womb, strong karmic connection with me. I hopped into bed with this boy, and this consciousness came and entered the egg and sperm in my fallopian tube. That sentient being, whoever it was, had died recently, found due to karma with me and the boy, you know, came to my body. That's intense, isn't it? Then I decided I'd have an abortion, you know. So that from my side was a tendency to kill. I didn't do it before or since. I didn't get pregnant again. I never had the thought to kill a human being before that or after that. So that was a tendency in my mind. But from their point of view, they had the karma called experiences similar to the cause of an experience similar to the cause of their past killing. And because karma is personal, it's a natural law. It's not random. It can't be random if it's a natural law. I must have had the karma. They had the karma to be killed by me. They came to my womb, but we had this extra karma that I would to be killed by me. Karma's personal, you know. It's not random. That's very bizarre to think it's random. So I had the thought, as soon as I realized I was pregnant, I had the thought to have an abortion. And they had the karma to be killed, and they died young. So that's the experience. They got the first one, they got the karma, the fully ripened result of past non-killing. They got a human mother. They won the lottery and got a human womb due to their past non-killing karma. Second, we don't know about their tendency yet because we didn't get born in time. I killed it. But 3, they had the experience similar to the cause of their past killing, such that they died in the womb as 12 weeks old, as fetus, you know. And not only that, it had the karma to be harmed, and they didn't cut the baby out properly. It had to have another, you know, had to do it second. They mangled the little fetus, you know, so they had the karma to suffer a lot too. So look at killing with, and so then the fourth result of killing or non-killing is environmental. So the result for killing, and look now, it's COVID-19, or now it's COVID-22, it's third variation, Omicron, isn't it? Not to mention Delta. This is the environmental result of killing, that you get sick. Sickness is the result of killing. Non-sickness is a result of non-killing, you know. I mean, so far for me, I haven't got it. I mean, I just left a trail of friends in Paris. They all got COVID after I left. You know, I haven't got it. Maybe I carried it. I don't know. But so far, I haven't got it. So you could argue that for this moment, at least for me, you know, is no killing karma has ripened yet as an environmental result, which is to get sick. But everybody who suffers from it and doesn't die, suffering from it is sickness. So that's an environmental result of killing. And if you die, that's the experience similar to the cause of past killing. You have those two karmas, you know. And look at it, it's universal, isn't it? The whole physical, the whole world. So the physical, environmental karma is that the physical world itself, which includes other humans, isn't it, impacts upon you. So you can't even kiss your boyfriend anymore. You'll die, you know. So your boyfriend is the physical world for you. So that's why we have to wear our masks and can't touch each other and breathe on each other. The whole world has got this one. So it's the collective karma of the entire human planet from countless lives ago. It seems that environmental karma takes most long to manifest. Count thousands of lives, probably from thousands of lifetimes ago. We collectively, as humans, are experiencing the fruit of collective past killing. You know, to have this pandemic. So non-killing means that the physical world nourishes you, helps you. It doesn't harm you. Food is delicious. Water is delicious. The air is good, you know. That's the fruit of non-killing. We can see that it's collective karma. On the other hand, it can be also individual. One person can eat a peanut and die. So for that particular person, that's environmental karma of past killing, as well as the experience similar to the cause of killing, that peanuts will cause them to die, whereas peanuts nourish other people. We can see that more and more these days with all these environmental illnesses, isn't it? Look at the nutritional values. Look at the nutritional information on food now, because we have so many allergies. You know, that's environmental karma of past killing. That things that would once make us healthy now make us sick. So the thing is that, you know, the Buddha's view is first always it's the main cause of everything any sentient being ever experiences, ever. First cause, your past actions. And this, as a Buddhist practitioner, really takes time to apply. We can learn this theory, but then forget all about it when it comes to experience, you know. But this is how you apply it. This is how you apply it. When we get sick, of course, the food was the one that made you vomit. But if you didn't have the karma from past harming of others to get sick when you ate the cake, that wouldn't have made you sick. This really takes time to think through. And so if we don't learn these concepts of karma, how can you apply it? You know, this is really why botany is a really great example. Of course, Buddha didn't use the word botany because it's Greek or Latin. You know, he didn't speak Greek or Latin, did he? Well, our scientific words are always in Greek or Latin, aren't they? But I mean, everything that you know, the first cause of everything. If you didn't know botany, you wouldn't grow a garden, could you? You have to learn the laws before you grow a garden. You have to learn the laws of botany so you can interpret what's in the garden. So I like that as an example. That our life is our garden, you know, whatever arises in our life, moment by moment, in the mind, how people see and treat us, and the physical world itself, everything. First cause of it, my past actions. This is not a complicated concept, but oh my goodness, it is not what we think. We never think that for a second. So if we're trying to apply Buddhist teachings, and no one's forcing us to, we don't have to. If we want to, this is the fundamental starting point of practice, you know. Start taking responsibility for all our happy experiences as well. I mean, this is something that is shocking to us, but I think it's important to talk about, you know, that we never, I always say, I talked about this one scientist, the only person that asked me that question. Well, I always say this, and it's true. There's one question nobody ever has asked, not at least not me. Nobody ever has asked me the question, Robina, why do good things happen? We ought to look at that, because even when we hear about karma, we always interpret it only in terms of the bad things. This is like, it's as if you think botany only refers to the weeds, but flowers are just good luck. That's superstition. Botany refers to everything that grows. So this is a huge point to make. But if we applied the laws of karma in our daily life, we'd be completely blissed out. Because if we look at our lives, no matter how bad things are, we can look at, there are so many advantages we have that are like a miracle. That if we realize how much virtuous actions we must have done, how much ethical behavior we must have practiced in the past, to even get a human body is like winning the lottery, you know. Who thinks that? No, we don't for 1 second. And then to have any good tendencies whatsoever is like a miracle. To have any good things happen to you is like a miracle. But we just think, oh, you know, we only think the bad things. We only ever look at the bad things and then think, I didn't ask to get born. It's not my fault. Why did bad things happen to me? It's just very ironic, you know. any second of you having any virtuous thought, that's the fruit of your past virtue. Any second, anything good happens to you. And that means that you can even get a cup of tea, that the weather's relatively reasonable, that a person smiles at you on the street, that someone serves you in a shop, that you have food in the fridge. I can't begin to count the number of things in one day for every one of us that is the fruit of our unbelievable morality and virtue and kindness and generosity. But we never think of the good things. We take them for granted. This is what ignorance causes. And then the moment one bad thing happens, we have a panic attack, you know. It's very, very fascinating. If we understood how much virtue we must have created just to have our ordinary, simple, humble life, it would blow our minds. So it's really important to remember the good things. And that means anytime any tiny thing happens that you want, a second you get what you want, that cup of tea, that pleasant feeling, the warmth when you need it, the cool when you need it, the sunny day, the person smiling at you, pleasant environment, pleasant things, relatively speaking, every day, every second of those is the fruit of one of your past virtuous actions. It should blow our minds. And then, of course, what we should do with it is not just greedily grasp at it and assume it's my right and give me more, please, which is how we think now. The hubris is incredible. We would realize, my goodness, that's incredible. Well, I bet, what am I going to do with this? I'm going to create more of them. It's like you've got a garden full of vegetables, you know. You know very well, you would never forget for 1 second that every single vegetable in that garden is the product of your hard work. You would never look out in that garden one morning and think, oh, aren't I lucky? Or, you know, and take them for granted and greedily eat up the vegetables and never think to grow another one. You'd never do that because you know that they are the fruit of your past hard work. And every time you eat one vegetable, you urgently want to grow another one because you know if you keep eating them, they'll run out. That's the attitude of karma, you know. It's very dynamic. You'd never waste a single second of all the good things that happen. We have, and this is where we had to look at attachment and anger. It's very fascinating, this discussion, I tell you. If we look at the mind, in the first part of the lab room, you look at the karma. Now, if you go to the next level, you start to look at the mind, which is the root cause of everything. We look at the 3 poisons, as Buddha talks about, the 3 toxic emotions. But effectively of those, attachment and anger are the main ones that play out in our daily life. They're primordially deep. Attachment is the main one. And speaking in this way, in a more subtle way, attachment, and this is what is explaining the way we think about good things and bad things happening. Attachment is this deep assumption in us that only the good things should happen to me. Attachment is the assumption that I only deserve the good things, and deserve is a really heavy word for us. So there's an assumption of attachment. It's an assumption based on the root delusion of ego grasping that I only deserve good things. And then, of course, when the bad thing happens, we don't deserve bad things, do we? So attachment is the assumption I only deserve good things and greedily grasping and getting all the good things, which is why we take them for granted. Well, of course I deserve good things. Give me more, please. And then when the bad thing happens, we have a panic attack and anger arises. The assumption is I don't deserve bad things. I tell you, we spend the rest of the week on this topic, just this. It's really fascinating, I tell you. We look into our minds and start to see this. These are completely false fantasies. They're nonsense. They're fabrications. They're false assumptions, and they're rooted in the root delusion of an I in the first place. The arrogance of them, you know, attachment is this arrogant view. I only deserve good things. So attachment, so we're greedily wanting more. Give me more, please. We don't ever think, wow, it's amazing. It's the fruit of my past virtue. I can't believe it. How hard I must have worked in a past life. This is amazing. I must create more of it. We never think that. And as soon as the bad thing happens, how dare that happen to me? We get angry and want to blame everybody else. I mean, this is samsara. Look at it. but also linked. This view of karma is utterly linked to the assumptions we have in our mind, the delusions, you know. That's what we have to observe in our minds. So applying the law of karma every day, if we did it properly, it will be mind-blowing. We'd be joyfully, blissfully happy every second. You'd never take for granted all those vegetables in your garden. You'd appreciate your hard work every second, and you'd make sure you would grow plenty more of vegetables because you know they're going to run out. It's a very dynamic attitude, isn't it? And every time a weed ripens, you grab it and think, I don't want weeds, I'm going to get rid of that. You don't blame somebody. Who put a weed in my garden? That's what we do now. It's very hilarious, you know. Such false views. So many misconceptions in our mind. But look at this. So the essence of the karmic one is we start to take responsibility. And this is like first level of Lam Rim. You start to take responsibility. You recognize, as Lama Zopa puts it, that everything we experience is our own karmic appearance. That's the way Lama Zopa puts it. Very marvelous. Everything we experience, every second of the day, whatever's arising in here, whatever happens to us out there, every second is our own karmic appearance. So if this is true, we better learn the laws of karma, haven't we? So we can apply it. Our life is our garden. Whatever's in it, we put it there. When we can start to see this, our life will be transformed. We will give up being a victim. We will give up blaming. We'll give up attachment. We'll give up anger. We'll become optimistic, confident, courageous, and we'll take responsibility. So this is just karma. It's profound, you know. We have to learn it. If we think we're Buddhists, we want to be a Buddhist, no one's forcing us. We better learn the nuts and bolts of Lord Buddha's botany, hadn't we? You can't say you're a gardener and not know botany. That's ridiculous. I love the law of karma. It means I'm the boss. I just think it's delicious. The idea that somebody else made me scares the life out of me. It's a horrible idea. Mother, father, or God, with respect. I was a Catholic and I never thought of God as my creator, actually. Never thought of it. I think I must have been a Buddhist before. More like a Buddha, you know. Anyway, I'm raving on here. It's time for questions, isn't it? Running out of time. I've got to go home soon. What time is it? Where's the clock?
8.
Oh, there we go. Look, 8 o'clock. Well, it's okay. Only 1 hour. All right. Questions. Come on. Everybody online.
Question in the chat, Venerable.
Are there any?
Yes, there's one.
One. Okay, cool. Ask it.
How is Bowley's attachment
Yes,
theory?
sweetheart, a bit louder, Jeff. It's a bit distant. You're a bit distant.
Okay, I tried. How is Bowley's attachment theory viewed from a
What's
Buddhist?
that first word? How is what?
Bowley or Bowley? I don't know the name. It's this person's name. It's an attachment theory. I'm not familiar with it.
I don't understand the question. I'm so sorry.
It's asking if there's Bowley's attachment theory.
What's that word you're saying before attachment? Bowery?
Bowly.
He's a psychologist.
Oh, I've never heard of him. Okay. What's his point, this fellow?
Well, it's the question is, how is this theory, attachment theory, viewed from a Buddhist perspective? But if we
I've
don't
no
know
idea,
the
darling.
theory,
You have to tell me
then I
what
don't
his
know.
theory. You'd have to tell me what his theory is. I can't answer. I'm so sorry. I can only tell you the Buddhist view about attachment, which is a deluded state of mind, a neurotic state of mind. It's emotional hunger. It's dissatisfaction. It's greedy. It's a symptom of being a very unhappy person, dissatisfied. I'm nothing. I'm nobody. Always wanting something more. And then it causes us to manipulate people. It causes us to possess. It's a very suffering state of mind from the Buddhist perspective. This other gentleman, I have no idea. You have to tell me what he thinks. I'm so sorry. What else, people? Any questions in the room? Yes, Wolfgang.
Venerable Robina, I also have a question about this attachment.
Why can't I hear it so well? For some
Hello?
reason. Hang on a
Can you hear?
second, just a second, sweetheart. Why can't I hear it so well?
Volume is up, but it seems
What?
like the speaker isn't. so
It's just the way the computer is it?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, you have to shout, Wolfgang. I can't see.
Okay.
I can't hear you, darling.
Okay. Based on my question from last week, I'm interested in the attachment. I was contemplating about attachment, and I came to the conclusion that the attachment is based on the good feeling. We are attached because it generates very good feeling.
Right. So you want to know the relationship?
Yeah, from where
Good,
does
I'll
the
talk,
good
it's a good
feeling come?
question,
The good
Wolfgang.
feeling.
Doesn't matter.
Why do I get good feeling from attachment?
Don't worry, it's okay. It's a good question. Let's just discuss it. This is something, it's another discussion altogether, Wolfgang, because it's related. This is not the karmic one now. It's a very good question. It's when we start to look into our mind and we learn the Buddhist model of the mind. Okay, this is a crucial one to understand, Wolfgang. It's quite a subtle point, but once we understand it, it's a revelation. Okay. So as you know from the discussions we've had, the Buddhist model, we could divide all of the contents of our mind, all the thousands of thoughts and feelings and emotions, we can divide them into 3 categories. And this is the crucial thing to understand. The first category are the neurotic, deluded, I-based, fear-based, unhappy ones: attachment, anger, jealousy, low self-esteem, pride, anxiety, you name it, all of those neurotic ones. We know them very well. They are I-based. They isolate us, they're fear-based, and they're the cause of our suffering, Buddha says. And they're the cause of why we do things with our body and speech to harm others, and therefore the cause of our future suffering, because we program our mind with negativity. Then we've got the positive states of mind, and we know these: intelligence, kindness, love, compassion, generosity, all of these. These are virtuous, positive, and this discussion goes quite deep, really. It sounds kind of simplistic to say negative and positive, but this is very clear meaning in Buddhist psychology. So the negative ones are rooted in ego grasping, have no sense of interdependence, they're irrational and panic-stricken. The positive ones are more rooted in dependent arising and are valid and reasonable, and actions we do on the basis of those produce our future happiness. So that's the fundamentals of negative and positive states of mind. So now there's a third category of states of mind. I always call them the mechanics of the mind. And this is, they're normally known as called neutral, which is confusing to us because it sounds like they are neither any, they're nothing. Neutral means nothing. It's not like that at all. Neutral means, in Buddhist psychological terms, it means they're neither negative and neurotic, nor are they positive and virtuous. So that's why I call them the mechanics of the mind. So for example, good memory, the ability to discriminate between this and that, concentration, all of these are crucial states of mind. They enable us to function, but they're not in their nature virtuous or non-virtuous. This is why these categories are crucial to understand if we want to understand Buddhist psychology. Now getting to the point. This is a surprising one. So your question, in that third category, literally the mechanics, there's another state, there's one state of mind that's called feeling. So now, not in the way we use it as an equivalent of the word emotion, but if we analyze our life, we can literally see every millisecond we are either having, and there's only 3 kinds, a pleasant feeling, an unpleasant feeling, or what they call a neutral one. But let's forget the neutral now. That's quite a subtle point. Basically, we know, and you're right, this is a relationship now between attachment, which is in the negative category, and feeling, which is just the way we're created, just the way we're constructed, not created. So every millisecond, we have, this is the point, something that we meet, like a chocolate cake, will definitely trigger a pleasant feeling. And the next billionth of a second, attachment kicks in and over exaggerates the cake's deliciousness, and then believes that the cake is the cause of the pleasant feeling. That's exactly why we keep eating the cake. And Buddha says it's a complete misconception. There is an experience of good feeling, no question. The cake does play a role, but the crucial point is the cake is merely a catalyst. It is merely a trigger for the good feeling, but we think it is the main cause of the good feeling. And this is not just meant to be splitting hairs. This is a major psychological and philosophical point, because in fact, Every single virtuous action we ever do will leave a karmic seed of virtue in our mind, and that eventually will ripen literally as a pleasant feeling. So if you can count the number of moments in one day and you had pleasant feelings, some very pleasant, some very small pleasant, some blissfully pleasant, every one of those is a fruit of a past virtuous action. But the tragedy is our being in samsara, Wolfgang, having this body of the five senses and being completely samsaric and having attachment. We make the false assumption, we have the false view that the cake is the main cause of the pleasant feeling, that the killing of the fish is the main cause of the pleasant feeling, that the lying and the stealing are the main cause of the pleasant feeling. And that's what keeps us locked in samsara. In fact, pleasant feeling, every one of them, its direct cause, its main cause is a past virtuous action. So by eating the cake and believing the cake is the cause of it, we're tipping that virtue down the toilet and just creating future suffering for ourselves. Do you understand?
Yes. And so why does the cake trigger a good feeling? Why
Because
does
of
the
habit.
cake trigger? Just a habit. It's just
It's just habit. Because I mean, but put it another way though. It doesn't always, because Wolfgang, look what happens when your stomach is full of 6 pieces of cake. The next piece of cake will only trigger unpleasant feelings.
Yes, and I don't like cake. So that's exactly why is it possible that you like cake and I don't like cake?
That's
I never
due
like
to past
cake.
karma as well. That's all due to past karma. Why do you want to kill fish and why do I not want to kill fish? Everything is karmic imprints. There's personal karmic imprints. Some people want to, some people want to kill, steal. Some people want to not kill and not steal. All that's personal. And even the food we like, it's pretty personal karma.
So if I start eating cake, if I start eating cake for one lifetime, at the end I will like it.
I missed your point. Say it a bit more slowly. What?
If I will start eating cake, at the end I will like it. I will generate the habit, and then I will like it.
You could train yourself. You could train yourself to like cake. Yes, you could, because we can change our minds. Absolutely, absolutely, you could. Yeah.
So it's a habit. It's just a habit. It's a habit.
It's a habit, precisely.
It's
Everything's a habit. Exactly. Everything's a habit. That's exactly right.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good people. Maybe I should bring my computer tomorrow because it's got loud sound. We'll fix it up. Okay. Yes. Good.
Every time I follow attachment, I create negative karma.
Yes, that's right. Exactly.
Every time I eat the cake, even if I'm aware that the whole process, I'm not just gulping.
No, then it's different. Then you're having control over it. Then you can.
I'm totally having control, but I'm still doing the cake. But I'm doing the cake in a Buddhist sense.
Yeah, then it's not.
And I'm not like an animal.
Exactly. As soon as we become conscious and aware, and that's why. Okay, it's all a question of the levels of practice. So at the very first level of practice, where the Buddha exhorts us, don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, at least those first actions which harm others. But he's also really exhorting us to don't eat 6 pieces of cake and don't jump on 6 boys a day, because that's just going to increase your own suffering. So the first level of practice is harness your body and speech. Don't eat too much cake. Don't jump on too many boys. Control yourself, because there's not much wriggle room. You can't. There's not much you can do to mitigate attachment. You just try to control your body and your speech and your attachment. But when we get to the bodhisattva path, and this is where Lama Zopa never stops giving us the instructions, that you can learn before you shove the cake in the mouth. You can think of it as empty. You can think, I'm going to eat to benefit others. Then you put unbelievable virtuous seeds in your mind, and that completely changes the action of eating cake for you. Even when you eat the cake, there'll probably be attachment there. But by having those thoughts first, you change the whole dynamic of the action, and it becomes, you create virtuous karma from eating the cake. That's the point. That's the whole point. That's the whole, and that's the redeeming factor. And if we could remember this, we would never dare do anything without thinking about bodhicitta. But we just think, oh yeah, bodhicitta, yeah, all right. And we forget, shove the cake in, There's so much. This is why the bodhisattva path is so brilliant. We can mitigate the rubbish by putting virtuous into it, virtuous action, virtuous motivation into it.
And then eventually I'm setting up the groundwork for future lives to diminish the attachment.
Precisely, darling. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. Yeah. And the other one, back to karma now, this is where understanding the way karma ripens. Then we have to understand how we can add unbelievable, to grow the point of karma by one, living in vows. I want to talk about this. And two, doing the purification practice every day. These are the real tools. And these are the real tools of applying the law of karma every day. Okay, let's just now talk about the power of vows, So first of all, when you create a negative action, sorry, any action, hang on, I need a drink. What time does the class end?
9.
Okay. Okay, so, every millisecond we think and do and say leaves seeds, right? So, in order just to get another decent human body when we die, we need bucket loads of delicious, intentional, rich, conscious, non-killing karmic seeds in our mind, especially non-killing, because killing is the most heavy karma. So the non-killing is the most powerful, virtuous karma at the bare minimum. But in general, we need lots of good, delicious, virtuous seeds in our mind of not killing, not stealing, not lying, not harming, not this, not that. Not to mention proactively loving and kind and doing virtuous things. The main energy of the first scope of practice is about refraining from harming. Why? Because we don't want the future suffering. So that's the bare minimum. Now there's a way to enhance that, and that is practice the virtue of non-harming in the context of living in vows. And this is just stupendous if we can understand it. The Buddha talks about, this is Buddha's teaching, but Lama Zopa never stops teaching this. It's so powerful. Okay, so when you do an action, let's say the action of non-killing. In order for any action you do that's called non-killing, for example, or killing for that matter, there have to be, for it to be a complete action of non-killing, such that it will leave a delicious karmic seed in your main bank vault, which is one of the seeds that will trigger at the time of your death, which will bring you another decent human body, bare minimum. There have to be 4 things in place when you do that action. The first is there has to be a living being there, an object of the action, like mouse in your kitchen. Second, and this is the main piece, there has to be your mind involved in it. If karma, the real meaning of the word karma is intention, not like motivation, but intention, bare bones volition, I will. That's the real meaning of karma. It's mental action. So the typical action of non-killing is 1, there's a mouse in your kitchen. 2, there's 2 parts of number 2, 2A and 2B. 2A, there's actually more to it, but we'll keep it simple. Is I must not kill the mouse, or I must be careful and not harm the mouse. That's just the intention. Even then, it really doesn't have any flavor. But the same second, there's going to be the motivation, which is 2B. The motivation, why? Compassion. So intention, I will not kill the mouse. Reason, motivation, because you don't want the mouse to suffer. That's called compassion. That's number 2, those 2 parts. 3, you do the action of saving the mouse. And 4, the result, a happy mouse. You throw the mouse out. Hello, thank you, Robina, goodbye. That's a complete action of non-killing, speaking very simply, okay? And you reverse that, and that's the same as an action of killing. 1, there's the mouse. 2, there's the intention, I will kill the mouse. Motivation, anger, disgust. How dare a mouse be in my kitchen? 3, you do the action. 4, a dead mouse. That's a complete action of killing or a complete action of not killing. So the not killing ones, we need bucket loads of those. They're the cause of a human body. Now, look at us in this room right now. None of us is killing anything, right? But what is our mind doing? We're not thinking, I must not kill, because there's no sentient being in front of us, unless it's your boyfriend and you're struggling not to kill him. We are literally at the moment being nice people, but we're not thinking I will not kill. So we're not creating any karma of not killing. And we need bucket loads of non-killing karmic seeds in our mind. So how do we do that? By living in vows of not killing. Buddha's teaching is, again, the Prasangika teachings, different views in the teachings, but having just a vow is like this subtle energy that's visible to clairvoyance. It's so delicious. I find that so delicious. And the vows for the Buddha are so powerful that he says, the point about a vow is this, as Lama Zopa says, you can have one person doing bucket loads of spiritual practice, but doesn't have a vow not to kill. And you have another person who's merely keeping nicely their vow not to kill, but doing almost nothing else. The second person is creating virtuous karma every single second and is putting atomic bombs under the tendency to kill every single second by virtue of the power of a vow. So it's like we can't get ahead of the game. As Lama Zopa says, just being good is not enough. I mean, we're being good now, right? And why is that? Because of our past virtuous karma of non-killing, that we have a good human birth, that no one is harming us, no one is killing us, and we're living in a nice city where there's no murderers and rapists coming out of the doorways, you know. This is due to our past virtuous karma, when we're sitting here resting on our laurels, thinking, aren't I a nice person? Yeah, because you don't need to do anything else, because you created the virtue. We've got to create more virtue. So you've got to have a vow not to kill. So this is the point the Buddha says. 24 hours a day that you have a vow in your mind stream of not killing, this is one, you are continuously creating virtuous karmic seeds, dropping them into your main bank vault, and purifying the tendency to kill. And this is the point now, when it comes to the suffering of this life. Look at the people, like I said, look at the people who are born as a human, but who have a tendency to kill. I mean, most people kill rats and cockroaches and ants and fish, and maybe some people kill humans as well. Look at it. But we consider it totally normal in our culture to kill mosquitoes and ants and all the creatures we don't like, and the rats and the cockroaches and everything else. We don't consider it. And why? Because two things. I think it's coming, we track it back to our Christian culture, where it was not wrong to kill animals because God made them without a soul. So it's not called murder. So the scientific view is similar. They don't, you know, we now maybe consider some animals have feelings, but in general, it's considered totally normal to kill ants and roaches and all the rest. This is a tragedy. So what happens? Oh, look in fishing, for example. I'm not being rude, you know. You're born, so this is the point. You've been in the lower realms in the past. Say you're a fisherman. You're born in the lower realms in the past. You've finished the karma of killing. You've exhausted that karma. And you finally, like a miracle, get a human body again. But look at it. You haven't purified the tendency to kill by living in vows and by purifying. You haven't purified the experience of getting killed. Look at the people who die young or get killed. You haven't purified the environmental result. Look at the people who get sick. This is environmental karma of killing. The three results of killing, like the residual results left over from the main karma, are you have a tendency to kill, you get killed, or you get sick. Look at the human planet. So we can deduce that most humans, we've come from past lower realm rebirth, we haven't lived in vows, and then the worst one is the tendency to kill. You spend your life killing, straight back to the lower realms, you know. This is the Buddhist view. So it's kind of heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. Show compassion. So living in vows, this is the difference. I always use the example, you know, this little boy, the son of one of my friends, this is 40 years ago. He's 3 years old and she's taking the lice out of his head and he's crying with compassion for the lice. Mummy, don't hurt them. It's their home, you know. And he's never killed a living being in his entire life. We can deduce logically he has lived in vows of not killing. Every one of us, maybe we killed a few things and now we become Buddhists, we've taken a vow not to kill. It's a miracle to even think not to kill any living being. I mean, look at the planet. This is unbelievable, the suffering, you know. To have the thought not to kill is like a miracle. And if we've got it, it's because we've lived in vows in the past. So without living in vows, you cannot get another human birth. And if you do get a human birth, you're just going to go straight back to the lower realms because you continue to kill, continue to get killed, or have environmental results. You know? And the worst one, of course, is the tendencies. So living in vows is stupendous practice. For now, totally transforms you now and guarantees, if we take the view of karma as our logic here, to continue to get decent human rebirths with decent conditions and the wish not to kill, not to steal, not to lie. You start to get ahead of the game. That's just in vows. Then you've got purification. As Lama Zopa says, we are insane not to do purification every day. So living in vows is already fantastic. Then you purify at the end of every day and continue to create virtue and to continue to put atomic bombs under your negative tendencies. These are the tools we can use to get ahead of the game, you know, and guarantee that we continue to get a decent human birth with decent tendencies so we can continue practicing our spiritual path. This is junior school practice. This is the first scope, you know. Only reason I'm a nun, look at me with these weird 14th century robes. It was cheap. I had to buy many clothes. So I appreciate vows, you know, I think vows are great. Psychologically, they're very powerful. Who asked me the question? I forget. It must be you. Oh, this is answer to you, I think. Or is it?
Yeah.
That's right. So are we clear, people? Any questions on what I've said? Yes.
Yeah.
Go.
So I was wondering about the evolution of karma. So you know, you mentioned that our karma is based on tendency, experience, and the environment.
They're the three, no, they're not so much based on, but they are the three of the four results of past actions. The tendency, experience, and yeah, that's right, exactly.
And then essentially we cannot change them. We can learn to live with them.
What do you mean you can't change them? Why do you say that?
Because this is what's given us, right?
Yeah,
So,
no, well, yeah, but you, of course you can change it.
we can change through our behavior.
Oh, I mean, you can, of course, you can change your behavior, but also you can purify. That's what purification is, sweetheart.
So my question is that changing then the tendency that's going to go in the next life?
Yeah, absolutely.
My life is influencing. I receive a tendency. Then I
You don't
do what-
receive, don't say receive. It's not like someone gave it to you.
Okay, sorry, yeah.
Just
someone
it's a
gave
good
it
way
to
to
me,
remember. That's all.
And then
You
I-
bring this tendency with you.
Yeah, can I influence that?
If you
The-
can't,
the
then there's
way
a-
it's going to be passed.
But
then
this is
to
the whole
the-
point of karma. It's a very dynamic law. Like, can I, you go to a, you know, you've got a garden with weeds in it. Can I change it? Yes, you can. You learn botany and you change it.
And then what's your view about the evolution? So how's karma?
So what do you mean? So how is it related to
at the
evolution?
macro level?
I understand. You understand.
Is
Okay.
it becoming more virtuous? you
Let me,
think,
no,
or is
that's an
it-
interesting point, isn't it? Let's look at that. Let's look at that. Okay. The relationship between the Buddhist view of karma and the physical view of evolution. I'll try and say it in my way. Okay. So okay, the evolution view, isn't it, is that we only have the physical. So there's a lizard, and that lizard came from another lizard, and each lizard over the years, they adapt to the environment and they change so we adapt to our environments, don't we? And we change the lizard. So you go back a while ago, lizards were quite different. You know, maybe they've got 6 fingers now, they only had 5 before, whatever. So yeah, Buddha doesn't argue with that. The physical world is the real physical world. But the difference is that lizard, the baby lizard, is not made by the mummy lizard. The baby lizard could have been a human being in the past life who, due to negative actions, got born into a lizard mummy. And while they're in that lizard body, they adapt the lizard body and they do part of the evolutionary thing. But then when that lizard dies, it might get born as an ant or another human again. So environmental evolution is not argued by karma. It's just got a different approach, because the people who go to the lizard body is a mind that was a human once. So evolution is real. But so maybe the way to say karma on a personal level is like karmic evolution, your own personal, but it's not always evolution. It goes up and down, you know. You don't always just keep getting better. You can be born as an ant in one life and a human the next. So that's your personal, if you like.
Yeah.
Karma is like personal evolution. I put it like that a bit. So I don't know whether we're getting any, the world is
Yes,
getting
no, I think
better.
it's gonna- So my question was more whether we collectively, as sentients,
Yeah, yeah.
is there a natural evolution of karma to be more, positive?
No, I don't think, I mean,
So
I think
there's
we have,
always gonna be that.
I think we've got to look at the evidence. Look at the evidence. I don't know. Do you think it's
That's
not, is it?
I was looking for a message of hope. But...
I know. Okay, there's a good point. I think the message of hope is that we individually can do it.
Yes.
We can change, and then we can influence others, and that's what the Bodhisattva path is. And I think that's the hope, that's the optimism. Because if you look at the evidence, it's kind of depressing, isn't it? And in a sense, in the Buddhist big picture point of view, over countless eons of time, the human birth now, this is opposite of what we think, the human birth now is a very degenerate human birth. It's a very deluded birth. It's a downhill. It's very, very deluded, full of attachment and lots of suffering. So it's actually gone down in the big picture point of view. So the only hopeful one is that we can do it, we can change, and we can have this confidence to want to help others to change. That's the only one. That's the hopeful part. And we could get great optimism from that, I think. Otherwise, we're going to all drown together, isn't it? You understand? Yeah. What else? People, any questions in there? Jeff, sweetheart,
I have a question.
where are you? Go on, yeah.
It was related to what you were talking about before about positive things that happen to you and you kind of like don't remember them. When you don't remember, you don't think about all the good things.
No, we don't.
happening to you.
Just take it for granted. That's right.
Yeah, so in regards to, because I always hear we should rejoice when good things happen.
Yeah, that's right.
what is the actual kind of karmic effect of rejoicing when
Okay.
something happens?
No, I think the thing of rejoicing is just part of it. It's like if you look at your veggie garden, instead of just taking, it's a really good point. You don't just take them for granted. Oh, they're all the vegetables. Look at them, you know. You go, wow, look at those vegetables. And the rejoicing means look at the result of my hard work, and then I better grow more. It's not just, aren't I lucky? Often we think it just means delighting in rejoicing, not just in the vegetables, rejoicing in your past hard work, that you created those vegetables. So rejoicing in your past virtue, that you caused this happiness, and then thinking, I must create more of it. That's the whole point of rejoicing.
But then would you not
Do you understand? And therefore other people too. You see people who are happy or rich or famous or whatever it might be, you delight for them. This is the fruit of their past virtue. It's not just isolated rejoicing. Aren't they lucky? That's the way we think in the West. It's due to their past virtue that they've been that way, and then you hope they will continue it.
So it's the main thing is then the action after. It's the
main one.
rejoicing
Rejoicing
and then-
means look at, not just rejoicing at the lovely vegetables,
Yes.
but rejoicing that you worked hard to grow the lovely vegetables, and then conclusion, I must grow more.
Okay.
That's the whole point. You really got it. Then you're really applying the law. Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then when we understand the same one of you see the bad thing happen, you delight because you just finished it. Because every time a fruit ripens, you finish that seed. So you're delighted to finish the negative ones. So you're happy, try to rejoice with that as well, if we can. Not easy. Anybody else on the screen? Anybody here? Any questions there, Jeff?
I mean, there was questions about karma intention, so I think you already explained that.
Go on, so say the questions. What are they?
Just find it here. So is karma based on an intent? So for example, a child who's not aware that they're creating bad karma,
Yeah.
will it also be counted?
Of course, yes. I mean, this is why it's really good to hear about it being a natural law. You know perfectly well, if you have a handful of cauliflower seeds, but you don't know botany, just because you don't know botany doesn't mean a cauliflower won't grow. So it's not a moralistic issue. Oh, I'm innocent. I didn't know what I was doing. The karma you create won't be as heavy because you don't have a strong intention to harm, and you don't have a strong motivation, you know, but still the karma takes care. No, sorry, that's not true. No, if you don't understand the law that everything you think and do and say will bring results, that's really what you're saying. Yeah, the negative karma will still ripen. So the first point I said wasn't quite right. I'll start it again. It's the cauliflower example. You don't have to know botany for a seed you put in the ground to grow as a cauliflower. That's the point. So any action of a typical person, whether they're a child or an adult, and nobody understands karma, you have an intention to kill, you're angry with the mouse, you kill the mouse and the mouse dies. Nobody thinks that's a negative action. The fact that you don't think it's a negative action doesn't mean it's not a negative action. Of course it doesn't. That's the tragedy. They say the bodhisattvas have such compassion for us, most sentient beings, because not only do we not, I mean, forget about not having the view of emptiness and realizing ultimate reality, but we don't even understand karma. We don't realize we create our own suffering and our own happiness. That should be the basis of unbelievable compassion for sentient beings. This is the tragedy. Because it's a natural law. Botany is a natural law. Karma is a natural law. That's the part we've got to get used to. It's quite shocking to us. We think it's something made by Buddha and as punishment and reward. That's how we think about it. No, it's a natural law. Karma takes care. Anybody else there, Jeff? More questions?
Just some questions about purification.
Yeah.
So for example, if you create a heinous crime, so like murder, what type of karma is that? How is it purified? And is it purified in this or next life?
Okay, good. Let's talk about purification. Okay, so there are 4 steps in the purification practice. 4 steps, they call them the 4 opponent powers. So the first point is because everything is impermanent, there's no karma we have ever created that we can't purify. There's nothing set in stone, you know, there's the point over here. There's nothing we can't change. Things take longer to change, some things, but there's nothing we can't change, which is a really powerful point for us because we have this tendency to think I'm a bad person, set in stone bad. We have such guilt, you know. So there's 4 opponent powers. There's an easy way to think of it in English as the 4 R's: regret, reliance, the remedy, and resolve. So regret is a really crucial first one to understand, which we usually misunderstand terribly. The commonest way we think of regret is, like, you know, we think of it as guilt. I did this, I did that, I kicked the dog, I cheated on my husband. And then automatically the next second we will conclude, and therefore I'm a bad person. This is a very strong tendency in us, and we've got to consciously change this. It needs a lot of inner work to change this thinking. And so regret is not guilt. But the other one too is very common. We say that regret is, well, I shouldn't have done that. I killed, I lied, I stole. I shouldn't have done that. That's another variation of guilt, and it's totally a useless thought. It's just anger. It's like a mother shouting at the child, you shouldn't have done that. What good is it? You did it. So regret is this very practical, brave attitude that recognizes, well, I did do this, and I did do that, and I did do this. But then the second part is what we have to change. And that is, what can I do to fix it? We've got to consciously say this. This regret step is a major step, I tell you. As Rinpoche says, this is the first step. Nothing will change if you don't do this one properly. So regret is this very courageous attitude of acknowledging, I did do this, I did lie, I did steal, I did kill, I had the abortion, I did that. And this is just a few things we remember in this life, you know. So when you do the practice at the end of the day, the first step is, well, think of the things you've done today. And this is very typical for us. We by the end of the day, we're exhausted. The argument we have with our husband, the shouting at the children, the shouting at the drivers on the road. We have all this anguish inside us, all caught up and guilty. We don't know what to do with it, you know. So it's really important. This practice, I think of it as like becoming your own friend, because it's very personal. You can do this practice, as we know, in the context of the you do it with a sadhana, you do the Vajrasattva mantra. It all feels like very religious and nice, but actually I find it so powerful to do it in a very simple way, in your own words, you know, going through these 4 steps psychologically. It's a very powerful psychological process, and it's like you're becoming accountable, and it's you talking to yourself. So the first one is you acknowledge what you did today, the things you did to harm others, speaking simply. And then you have to practice this, you know. Well, I did do that, and I regret having done this. And this is the point now. The meaning of regret, it's exactly, I'll use the analogy all the time. It's just like if you understand that eating, if you've got sugar, if you eat too much sugar, you might get diabetes, you know, or you smoke cigarettes, you might get lung cancer. So the whole attitude of regret is, oh my God, look at all that smoking I've done. I regret having done that because it's going to cause me to suffer, and I don't want suffering. So this first step of karma is all about yourself. It's not compassion for others yet. The first step is like compassion for yourself. So acknowledging, I did eat that sugar. I mean, I'm just using that as an analogy. I did smoke that cigarette, and you have this feeling of, I'm a fool having done that. Look at me, following my attachment, following my ridiculous old habits. I don't want future suffering. And we know that when it comes to cigarettes and sugar. And so the same here with karma. And I think in our culture in the West, we feel bad about this. We think it sounds like you're being selfish. But if we don't have this understanding that the reason behind Buddha exhorting us not to kill, not to steal, not to lie, isn't only because it harms others. The first step to realize is because that will cause me future suffering. So it's like compassion for ourselves, and we miss this in the West, you know. We've got to have this sense that we create ourselves. And who wants future suffering? I don't want to be killed, lied to, stolen from, not to mention the concept of lower realms. You know that if you're going to continue your rebirths, you don't want that suffering. That's real if you can imagine it. So karma is like compassion for yourself. So regret is based on that. I did kill, I did steal, I did lie, I did do this, and I regret having done this because I don't want future suffering. That's regret. not guilt, not I'm a bad person, not I should have done it. That's all meaningless. This is so important. It's like kind to yourself, taking care of yourself, you know. And then, of course, you can think, well, all my countless past lives, I must have done countless negative actions. There are countless negative seeds in my mind that haven't yet ripened. So, of course, I regret having done them. And of course, because I don't want the future suffering. So I regret them from the depths of my heart. Whatever I have done with my body and speech to harm countless sentient beings in countless lifetimes, I regret because I do not want the future suffering. Then, whom can I turn to? The second step. What can I do about it? So the next step, this is the analogy of the doctor. You know, I've eaten this sugar. Where's the doctor? Whom can I turn to? Who can give me the remedies? And this is the crucial difference, I think, not I think, it is, the crucial difference between the typical religious view we have, and I'm not criticizing it, it's just different. You know, when you're a Christian, for example, I always quote this, that a sin or a negative action, by definition for a Christian, my Jesuit priest friend, when I asked him, said, by definition, a sin is doing what God said not to do. As we say, going against the will of God. He said there's some natural law aspect, meaning, let's say, killing. People don't like getting killed. But he said the key thing that makes killing wrong for a Christian is because God said not to. This is a huge difference, you know. But that's how we tend to think of it. There's a guilt, I'm a bad person, I'll get criticized, I'll get harmed, I'll get blamed, I'll get punished. That's the Christian view. It is not the Buddhist view. For the Buddha, who also, like Jesus, exhorts us not to kill, the reason is not because he says so. It's because he's a wise doctor who has found from his own experience that if you kill, it leaves a seed in your mind that will ripen as your future suffering. So he exhorts us not to do it first for our own sake. So you turn to the Buddha. Whom can I turn to? Whom can I rely upon? So the first part of the second step is two parts. You rely upon the Buddha, who is like our doctor in this framework. He's not our creator, and he therefore absolutely is not a person. And this is the Christian teaching. Because God is the boss, you must confess to God. You must beg God to forgive you. That is what purifies you. That is not anything to do with the purification practice here. Buddha is a nice person. Of course, he'll forgive you. But that's got nothing to do with it. That's like asking your doctor to forgive you. That's like asking your doctor to forgive you for smoking, and that forgiveness stops you from getting cancer. We would laugh at that. It's the same with the Buddha. He's not a recreator. He's a doctor who's found from his own experience that killing will cause you future suffering. So rely upon the Buddha. So the first step is reliance. It's called refuge. You rely upon, you remember the Buddha. Then the second part, they talk about this as reliance, and it sounds a bit curious. But the second part is you rely upon, they call relying upon sentient beings. You now just basically means you're now trying to do the second part of the practice, which is have compassion. First, it's like compassion for yourself. I regret killing because I don't want future suffering. Now you regret because you don't want to harm others. You have compassion for the sentient beings you've harmed. And if you're brave enough, you have compassion for the sentient beings who have harmed you. And why should we do that? Because they will suffer in the future because of their past, because of their negative action of harming you. That's the real basis of real compassion. So you rely upon the Buddha, who's your doctor. Be delighted you've got a method that you can use. And second, you have compassion for the sentient beings you harmed. Third is the remedy. You take the remedy. So there's a whole, this is often referred to as the antidote. So in daily life, of course, if you regretted killing, you would do the opposite, which is try and save lives or help people. If you regret lying, you would try and tell the truth. That's an antidote. You must do that anyway. But the most potent antidote, and this is the Tibetan Buddhist practice, you do this practice in the context of these 4 steps, and this third step, you visualizing the Buddha, whom you took refuge with before, in the second step, Vajrasattva. And then you recite the mantra and you visualize purification. This is the third one, the remedy. And Islamic, and this sounds so abstract to us. How can me saying a mantra purify me? How can me visualizing the Buddha sending nectar down my crown purify me? Well, guess what, folks? It's your mind. As Lama Yeshe says, we create negativity with our mind and we purify it by creating positivity with our mind. Our mind purifies ourselves. So by imagining the Buddha, imagining nectar, saying these powerful Sanskrit sounds, that is the most potent antidote, said to be the most powerful practice, the remedy. And the fourth, as Pabonka Rinpoche says, the most important, the resolve to not do it again. So when you hear that, sugar will cause you diabetes, you regret having done it because you don't want future suffering. Okay, you can think of compassion as well. You've got the kids and you don't want to die, you think of compassion. But the real one is you vow not to eat sugar again. It's clear. I will never kill. If you've taken the vows, you reiterate your vows. I will never kill again. I will never lie. I will never steal. And it's not just wishful thinking. You're strengthening that habit in your mind. And so this is the perfect way to end your day, with these 4 steps. Super powerful psychologically. So living in vows and purification, you can't wish for better practices. These are the most powerful practices, and this is the fundamentals of your Buddhist practice. There's no karma you can't purify. The final purification is realizing emptiness. This is like preventing, it's like putting atomic bombs under all the seeds, but it doesn't uproot the seeds. But that's when you finally realize emptiness, that you cut the seeds. So this keeps you ahead of the game, keeps the weeds under control, That's how you purify. And as Lama Zopa says, you're insane not to do it every day. End your day with it. But sincerely doing the 4 steps, not just, I did my Vajrasattva mantras, No, you got to go through the 4 steps. You can do it quickly, it doesn't matter. But be sincere in these 4, because it's psychology, it's the mind, It's just religion. It's absurd to think of it as religion. It's psychology. But you are the one who purifies. So there's more information to come. Lots of 4s. So here, this is so helpful. This is so helpful. These 4 steps purify, each of them purifies the 4 ways that karma ripens. So the first one, regret, is really interesting. Regretting, let's say, past lying, purifies the experience of not being believed or of being lied to. And this is a very powerful one for daily life. Let's say it's at work, someone's accused you of doing something and you didn't do it. And it's heartbreaking. So then when you understand karma, you'll know it's because you accused somebody, you've lied in the past. And when you do your purification that day, instead of freaking out and wishing they'd change their mind, it's not fair and how dare they, you will remember that you created the cause. So you will regret deeply whatever you must have done in the past to cause this person to not believe you now. And don't be surprised, it will start to change. So regret purifies the experience of that happening to you. Second, the second one, refuge and reliance and compassion, that purifies the environmental karma. I don't quite understand this one. But they have this analogy that, and especially I think it's related to karma, actually, not just compassion, that the ground you fall down on is that hurts you, is the very ground you rely upon to stand up. So somehow they talk about sentient beings, they talk about relying upon suffering sentient beings. In order to get compassion, you want to get compassion, you need suffering sentient beings. And as Geshe Sopa says, bodhisattvas need their enemies. They're the powerful ground for our development of amazing compassion. So that's said to purify environmental karma. The third one of the remedy, that purifies the lower realms, the main result of karma. And the fourth one is obvious, the vow not to kill and steal and lie again, you develop that tendency in your mind, purifies the tendency to keep killing and lying and stealing. So when you do these 4 and live in vows, you can guarantee you'll get a really good human birth, live a long life, have no tendency to harm or kill or lie or steal. You'll have money in the bank, and they've got to have generosity is the action, the karma for that. And you'll have time and leisure to continue practicing your spiritual path and get ahead of the game. This is Buddhist practice. How are we going? Any questions? Hope that answered that person's question. Yes, Lars.
Yes. How do I know that I purified a certain event enough?
When you realize emptiness, only when you realize emptiness.
Right.
Finally, that's you weaken. Every time you do, you weaken them. You can see in your own tendencies. I mean, you don't know until you're clairvoyant, Lars, because the karmic seeds are ancient, aren't they? Countless karmic seeds. But you know, you just keep doing and purifying and practicing virtue and getting ahead of the game. But it's finally when you realize emptiness, you totally purify. If you haven't realized emptiness, you could even have single point of concentration. Buddha says we've had it many lifetimes, but we've gone back to the lower realms because we lost the plot. So until we realize emptiness, we're not safe.
So every day while doing my purification, I would remember this certain event.
What, darling? What?
I would every day while doing my purification, I would remember this certain event that I did, like hoovering up a lot of ants that invaded my house.
So I'm missing what you're saying, Lars. I'm so sorry.
Every day while doing my purification, I would remember the same event every day.
You be what?
Remembering.
So remember, go on, you do the purification. Forgive me, go on.
There I remember and regret that I did this act of.
You regret because you don't want future suffering. You have compassion and rely on the Buddha. You do your Vajrasattva and you do the visualization and you vow not to do it again. You're programming your mind. What more do you want?
Yeah.
It's like practicing music every day. You're happy because you're getting ahead of a game. If you forget to play music, you'll give up.
Right.
Just keep doing it until it's habit and eventually you realize emptiness. It's ongoing every single day process. So it's inevitable and logical that it's going to bring results. As to when it's all done, finally, when you finish the path. Isn't it?
Yes.
Do you understand?
I do.
Okay.
Okay.
What else? Yes.
Have you realized emptiness?
Bit louder. What, darling?
Have you realized emptiness?
No.
But you could be a bodhisattva who like
Well, I could be.
came in.
I could easily be, but I mean, I'm telling you I'm not. But you can do
Yeah, no,
if you want to think I am, that's up to you. You can decide. But I'll tell you what, I said, this wonderful story about His Holiness. I love this story so much. You've heard the story?
Yeah, but tell it again.
I'll tell it again. Yeah, I love this story because I mean, the Tibetans have this wonderful humility, and they all say in the text, the higher you become as a practitioner, the more humble and ordinary you look. You know, so when you look at His Holiness, he's the most ordinary person on the planet. He's amazing. He's so funny and down to earth. But of course, they all say, "Oh, I don't know anything." Well, it backfired one time in this teaching years ago in America. Lama Zopa tells the story. This fellow burst into tears and said, "Well, if you don't know anything, Your Holiness, what chance have we got?" That's a really good point, you know. So he kind of backtracked a bit and he said he knew a few things after all. But then he was so sweet, he then told everybody that when he was in India in 1956 for the 2500th anniversary of the Buddha's enlightenment or something, he had a memory of being a poor Indian in the back of a big crowd of the Buddha's teachings. I thought it was the sweetest thing he said, just to give us some courage, you know. And I see, frankly, I see with His Holiness now, not that I know much, but I go to his teachings, he teaches in a very different way to us people. He talks about when I was 15, I learned this, and they never talk that way normally, but he speaks in a very different way, which is how we talk, you know, because it's not considered weird. It's not being arrogant, just it gives encouragement. Yeah, it's amazing. What else? Yes, go.
Yeah, not about karma directly, but about rebirth.
Rebirth, yeah.
So we have talked about this before.
Yeah, go on.
And when somebody dies, they will be reborn, of course.
Yeah.
But so many people, they have a near-death experience.
Yeah, that's right.
And they meet that person again. So
they meet that person again.
They meet them again.
Like
meet who again?
Like their deceased loved ones or relatives.
Oh, they see other people.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, that's interesting. I know. Go on.
Yeah, no, just how can you explain that?
I know, it's a very interesting one to try and explain. I understand. No, I understand. I understand. All I can. Okay. Okay. You know, I think. Okay, if we understand the Vajrayana model of the mind, we've got gross consciousness, which is our sensory consciousness, and then inextricably linked to our gross body, this one. Then when that ceases, which is at the time of death, when you stop breathing, now your subtle consciousness is now prevailing. And that's what dreams, the subtle is when we go to sleep, which is similar to death, you then dream, and that's your subtle consciousness. Now, some people have the vividest experiences, don't they, in their dreams? They see things, they have clairvoyant experiences, they have so-called visions of things. It's a bit similar now when you're going through the process of death and you get to the subtle level of your mind and you have all these amazing experiences, and then you come back again. You can easily see, of course, in fact, there's this but it doesn't always follow you're seeing the actual person. It could be a vision of the person. It could be your idea, like in a dream. It could be an idea of the person. It might necessarily see the people, but if it is, it could be in the. Okay, let me tell this story. Okay, I remember thinking years ago, in the 90s, I think when the web started, I forget, in the 90s. When did the web start? When did the movies on the web start? 80s, 90s, 90s, wasn't it? I remember somebody showed me a movie by an American doctor who did a video, he had a lot of his patients who had near-death experiences, but they were like hell-like, not nice ones. So it's very interesting. One story was this fellow who was an alcoholic, and he suddenly found himself, like at the classic story, walking on a tunnel, and at the end of the tunnel there was this conflagration, this fire. It was hell, and he saw his friends in their human form. So now, if you're born as a hell being, your body is made of fire. You can't have a human body, no way in the world. But because he got the karmic connection with those people in his mind at a subtle level, he saw them as humans. But if they're in a hell realm, they can't be in a human body. But because he's familiar with that mind, he sees them as his mummy or as his daddy, but they wouldn't be in that form actually. They couldn't possibly be if they were in hell. Are you with me? Are you communicating with me?
In the imagination, or is it actually?
What I'm saying is, obviously he had his subtle level, he saw his friends, but they wouldn't, if a hell being is a being, we've got the four elements, okay? And then we've got a mind, and they're linked. So a hell being would be a being whose four elements basically are predominantly fire, and their mind is conjoined with fire. They wouldn't look like a human being, no way. But because he's familiar, he's got a karmic connection with that person, and he sees them in a human form, but they're actually in a hell form. He sees them in their human form. Do you see what I'm trying to say? Because he's familiar with that mind.
That cannot imagine what is not unimaginable.
What?
We cannot see them in their form because we cannot imagine this.
Well, I don't know. He sees that form because he's familiar with that form.
Exactly.
So, and there's also this other very interesting. When I edited Mandala, we did these excerpts every now and again of this particular book. There's a type of person in Tibet, or usually it's Tibet because it's Tibetan Buddhists, and it's usually women. They're called Daylong. And they're a type of person who they can literally just choose to go to sleep, lie in their bed for several days, and then travel around to all the different realms and meet people and come back and tell the stories. So they see them all in human form. But if you're in a spirit realm, honey, you're not in a human form. If you're in a hell form, you can see them and they recognize that was your mother, that was your father. And she comes back and tells the stories to help people understand karma. But it's just the vision you have of that person, the karmic vision you have of that person in that form.
So
do you understand my
meet
point?
On a more subtle level.
What, darling?
These people, they can meet other in a more subtle level if you are there to realize.
Say it again. What?
This person that she could.
This particular woman, she's got the power to leave her own. She's got the power to manifest her own subtle mind and meet different beings. Yeah, when you're more advanced, you can do that. The great yogis and yoginis can do that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So there's other interesting. The other story. Oh, that's right. That's right. These friends in hell. They're screaming at him, go back, go back, go back. So he woke up, So then he served Jesus. That's okay, nothing wrong. But the other person in the same guy told this other interesting story. I find this interesting story for two reasons. Another fellow was also, they both confessed to being mean to their wives, these blokes, in this story. It was very nice. And so this other one, he wasn't an alcoholic, he was a businessman. He was mean. And he was in the hospital waiting for his heart operation. And his wife was by the bed. And suddenly he finds himself standing by his wife. And he talks to his wife and she doesn't hear him and he gets annoyed with her. And then he looks over at the bed and he realizes his body is in the bed. So clearly he's got this experience. And this is also an interesting point. You don't leave your body. He had the experience of leaving his body, but you don't leave your body. If you leave your body, you're dead. But your subtle mind has the experience of floating above, like all the people who have out-of-body experiences while they've got their heart operation, they don't actually leave their body because your subtle mind your subtle mind has the experience of being outside and seeing things, but you're not leaving your body. So this particular guy, this very interesting story, he was having, he suddenly heard the people outside in the corridor saying, come on, John, because he's very worried about getting his operation. And he thought, oh, good, my operation's ready. So he went out on the corridor and he started going with this person, and they were all nice to him. But he started walking on the corridor, and then they suddenly became mean to him and brutal and beating him and abusing him. But the first thing he said, and I find this very interesting, the first thing he said was, the walk along that corridor took as long as walking from here to Alaska. Now, wherever you are in America, Alaska's a long way away, you know. So in other words, the experience of time, I find very fascinating. And, you know, he can't have been more than a few seconds, probably in our human terms, but it took as long as walking from here to Alaska. So I often think when they talk about lower realms and 42 eons, maybe it's just the experience of 40, which is the real point. Who cares if it's 2 seconds on a clock or it feels like eons, then it is eons, you know. Anyway, the point was they abused him and then they left him, and he was left in this darkness and despair, he said, the likes of which he had not known, and he didn't know what to do. So he thought, oh, I better pray. And he hadn't prayed since he was a little boy. So he started, our Father who art in heaven, and he couldn't continue, he forgot. Then he started to say, oh, the Lord is my shepherd, he couldn't continue. Then he just shouted out, Jesus, help me. So way over in the distance, this little light came, and it got brighter and more powerful because it's Jesus, his vision of Jesus, his mental vision of Jesus. I mean, imagine if green Tara appeared to him, he'd get a big shock, wouldn't he? You know, so it shows how it's cultural and its images in the mind, isn't it? This light becomes more amazing, more radiant, completely heals his broken body, and he's completely in bliss, and he wants to go with Jesus. But Jesus says, no, you go back and serve me. So he went back and served Jesus. So it's karmic visions. It's a vision created by his own mind. The way things appear to you is based on your habits, you know. So if you're a Buddhist, you're going to see green Tara. I mean, he'd get a shock if some green naked lady appeared to him. He wouldn't know what to do. You understand? So he called it Jesus, you know. Or people who have these out-of-body experiences and come back and talk about how God said this and God said that. It's because that's their culture. They call it God, you know. So much of it's created by it is created by our mind. Everything's our own karmic appearance. Time to go home. I'm assuming because you people can't hear that you can't hear me, so I'm shouting. But I suppose shouting is what I normally do, isn't it? You all hearing me, you people? Good, okay. Honey's done it's nearly time to go. 2 minutes. Any more questions? Any more questions, Jeff?
David has his hand raised.
Hello, David. Ask a question.
Yes, thank you, Venerable. What is the effect of suicide karmically?
Good point. Let's discuss it, David. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so if we look at, just again, take an action and analyze what's involved when we do an action, David. And the crucial thing, I didn't really finish this before, but the crucial component in when we do an action is what's in your mind, which really makes sense. You could have a mouse in that kitchen and not even see the mouse. And maybe you stand on the mouse and the poor mouse suffers terribly, but you didn't even see the mouse. So there can't be an intention to kill, and there was no motivation to kill. Are you understanding me? So what's in the mind is the main player in the karma we create. So, I mean, with suicide, I mean, look at the suffering we have. We're full of despair. We can't stand the pain anymore. We can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's usual, don't you agree, that we're kind of, it's not a happy motivation. You don't kill yourself because you're full of love and compassion. So it's sad and tragic, but the motivation, you'd have to say, is more linked to ego grasping than to virtue, because it's despairing and hopeless. And that's the function of ego, unfortunately. So it's, generally speaking, you would say it's not a positive action, of course. It can only bring suffering results. But it depends on the person and the time and how strong the motivation is. You can't say, because we're not clairvoyant. But in general, what goes on in the mind is the main player that determines the character of the action and the intensity of its goodness or badness. Do you understand, David?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Time to go. Yes. Time to finish, Lance? Shall I finish?
Yes, we will. Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, so we all go. So they thank you, people, everybody. And we think here we've been now 2 hours. Not a single second has gone astray. I don't know how many 45,000, what was it?
45,000, I think, per day.
Per second or per day?
Per day. What did they say in the video, Sandra? You watched it too from Dawn. 45,000
Negative thoughts.
They call them ants, automatic negative thoughts.
Okay, so anyway, we can imagine as many moments as there have been in this 2 hours. We think all these marvelous thoughts we've had, these marvelous seeds we've planted. So even though we don't remember most of it, it doesn't matter. The seeds have gone in, okay? So we think we're going to nourish these seeds we've planted by continuing to think about this, apply the laws of karma, be delighted to nourish it with our practice, with our virtue, so that we never give up, so that eventually, as we motivated, all these seeds we plant will ripen as our Buddhahood, so we really can be of benefit to others. So be very delighted. As we said, before, the Tom. You're Tom, aren't you? I forgot. He's Tom. Thomas from Australia, like me. Okay, so I found it hard to understand you. It's very strange. I'm Australian, but I'm so used to hearing Americans or something. Now, what's he saying? I couldn't hear. Anyway, so we delight all these karmic seeds and we continue to nourish them and want to grow more. And then we also think, may compassion grow and grow in the hearts of all. So I'll just sing it. We can sing in Tibetan. Nice little tunes, make our minds happy. Gewadi nududag lama sange drugyurne drowa chikyang malupa Dei sala gopashog Jam chob sem chog rinpoche ma ke panam ke gyuchi ke panyam pa me payam gong ne gong du vavashog. Okay, that's it. So I'll see you Thursday, isn't it?
Yes.
Apparently. Have fun tomorrow in your class you're having. I just want to say, Buddha's your best cognitive therapist. You can't get better than Buddha for cognitive therapy. When you get that, you really understand his power, So anyway, enjoy. Thank you, darling.
Thank you, Venerable, for
Was it
joining
good?
us tonight.
Thank you, Venerable Robina.
Thank
What?
you.
Thank you.
What happened?
Thank you, Venerable Robina.
Thank you. Okay, goodbye. Thank you. Goodbye.